morning, good evening, good afternoon to all our audience from around the globe, and welcome to ICG webinars. And today we are going to address a very important topic that's close to your heart. But let's allow a few seconds for everybody to log in, and then we will start by introducing the presenters, and then we will move into the main agenda for today. As you, I'm sure like me, you have spent a good part of your life writing proposals, and it takes a lot of energy to do that. This is definitely not something that we take lightly because of the amount of information that we need to process. And today we thought it would be a very good idea to address the topic of the anatomy of a winning ICG proposal, or how to ensure that we can help our consultants to address the issue of proposal writing at a level of depth that can make you more efficient and productive and effective in getting the best you can to present the great value that we bring to our customers around the globe. Today I have two guests who will help me with that. One of them, of course, you're familiar with, our global CEO and the Financial Services Global Head of the Practice, David Maloney. David, welcome again to our webinars.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, Wade. Look forward to another great event.
Oh, great. Thank you. And then we have actually a guest who is with us for the first time from Melbourne, Australia, our lead for the Governance, Risk and Compliance Practice, Luke Weisbrand. Luke, welcome to our webinar too.
Thank you very much, Wade.
All right.
You and being here.
Great to have you. Great to have you. Okay, I think we are ready to start. So let's start with David. David, one of the questions that I actually was asked a few times, and I personally struggled with it from time to time, which is at what point in time in the sealing process we should see clearly the triggers that get us into the proposal stage or writing a proposal. And once we start this, how can we ensure that we maintain the momentum, and through be very specific about what are the sections that we need to include to ensure actually a proposal that can hit the mark with our clients? Would love to hear your perspective on that, David.
Well, a great question, Wade, and delighted to share my perspectives. And my perspectives are based on being a consultant for nearly over 30 years now and being a partner, senior partner, CEO of a couple of major global brands, including ICG now as a major global brand, and witnessing and helping many people develop, refine, polish their proposals so the probability of winning is greater. To get to your specific question in terms of what characteristic do I look for before I start writing a proposal, well, my answer is a little counterintuitive. My answer is that I look for some type of active commitment from the client, i.e. the client has to do something to demonstrate to me that they're serious about buying, because until they're serious about buying, they're getting my time for free. So what I ask them to do is one of two things. I ask them to invest, what other people on this call might believe is an inordinate amount of their time, because the two things that are valuable for them are their time and other resources at their disposal. So if they're spending their time educating, training, and supporting me in better understanding of their needs, that's an investment in their time, because they're not basically doing their day job, unless their day job is specifically to help me develop a proposal. And the second thing, of course, is other actions, activities, resources that they can bring to bear. And probably of all of the ones which I think best approximate success in a proposal probability sense is introduction to their peers or their superior. So as part of the process, I often ask, is there anyone else in your team, or should we get your superior involved? And of course, the way to ask that is really around authorization, and input to the process. So it's about learning, it's about syndicating, it's about building rapport and understanding with the people who are actually the decision makers, because in the consulting process, we often start lower than we need to for the actual decision. And so the person who actually wants the consulting service or is going to approve or select the winner will often send a lieutenant out to do some of the searching and hunting. And what I try to do with both of those two questions is make sure that they're serious, and then make sure that I'm, at least interfacing to some degree in the process with the person who's the actual decision maker rather than the lieutenant. So hopefully that gives you a sense of the first part of your question. The second really related to structuring proposals, and what do I see as important structural elements. The classical situation, complication, question, answer process, I think, is the best in terms of communicating understanding, and then the nub of the question, and then the approach. And there are, various styles of getting to that. But generally speaking, a section which says our understanding in a nutshell. I think that our understanding can be overdone. And I've seen a lot of consultants, put 5 or 10 pages together around our understanding of your problem. And this is the borrow your watch to tell the client the time element. And so I tend to not over egg that. I just keep that to a very short 1 or 2 pages at most. And sometimes I just say our understanding on a page, and that saves me time. And the client only wants to understand that you've heard them. They don't need all the gory details. So particularly if they send you a RFP, don't just regurgitate boilerplate. I don't see any value in doing that at all. Our perspectives, which is the second typical section, really is a way to demonstrate that we've got perspectives on their problem that are relevant and add value to their existing understanding. So I don't put 101 material there. It's got to be 201, 301. It's got to be relatively advanced. It's got to be nuanced, contextualized to their problem. And so I think, our perspectives section, is very valuable. Some people in this section will also put, why us, why ICG? And this is where our Forbes Global Top 200 branding, where our global footprint, where our 5,000 plus people, 13-year history, all those things can come to bear, or you can put that, towards the back. Then the area around the approach and process. So our approach to the problem, clients are saying, well, you understand my problem. You've told me that you and demonstrated that you know my space. Now I want to see how you're going to go about it. And then I want to see the price. I think they're the sort of questions clients ask. So that's typically, how I'll structure a proposal. So sorry for the potentially long-winded answer to your 2-part question there, but, hopefully that's helpful to the audience.
No, definitely helpful, the way you presented in terms of the sections and the triggers required. David, once this process is triggered and on the way, what do you usually do to ensure the ongoing engagement from the client side during this process?
Well, you're right to ask this question, because there's this deathly silence after you press send. And so a couple of things that I do differently now. Firstly, in my email, I always ask them to acknowledge receipt. In the earlier years, I just send it into the ether and just sort of hope it arrived. Now I ask them to acknowledge receipt. And I notice that, the automated procurement and government systems, typically will send you a receipt, a little bit like the homework stamps that we used to get. So that provides a little bit of comfort. There's actually sort of been received at the other end. And then, of course, depending on the procurement process underway, you may not be allowed to talk to the client at all. And it's very important you adhere to any constraints or restrictions. Certainly in my view, I've never broached them in any way. And I would discourage anyone considering doing so. Subject to a sensible amount of time for the client to open the proposal, read it, syndicate it with the relevant stakeholders, which would be at least 3 business days, potentially 5. I would then send a gentle email just to say, you know, I hope the proposal was on the mark. You know, would love to have a conversation, hear any initial thoughts or feedback. And obviously, to the extent that our proposal needs any refinement, you know, would love an opportunity to refine it to better meet your needs. And so I think that invitation or open would be a logical next step. But again, goes back to commitment. The best thing to do is get in their diary, get some time, get them working on the proposal with you, and get other people as well. So a better outcome rather than sending emails is to say, you know, is to request a time with them so that you're going through a general sort of Q&A. And you want to move away from, they've asked you for a response to a point where you're demonstrating just how well you can collaborate on a joint piece of work. And I actually use that term, you know, with the clients to sort of say, well, you know, this is now a joint plan, a joint program, and they see that they're working with me and the rest of the ICG team in a joint collaborative way, just in the way that they're going to be doing that going forward, you know, once the gas meter starts.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks, David. Look, now I know that you have also extensive experience in writing proposals and winning proposals, of course. How you tailor the sections that David talked about when you to meet the client's needs at the end of the day, and to be great actually if you can use some live experiences or a case study that you had recently to explain your approach to the tailoring process.
Sure, thank you, Wade. I specialize in governance, risk and compliance, and recently ICG won a governance, risk and compliance opportunity because partly we tailored the proposal to meet the client's needs. So the client is a major Australian Stock Exchange listed lender, and we took our time to understand the lender's context, identify what challenges they had. Were they credit risk management, operational resilience, regulatory compliance? And then we aligned the proposal to meet their ambitions. So when I say ambitions, these are things that aren't necessarily articulated in their RFP. So understanding the context of the client, we knew because of the industry that they were in, that they'd need to align their risk framework with APRA regulations, their prudential regulator in Australia. So our proposal focused on the solution to improve risk assessment efficiency and governance oversight that delivered against APRA aligned risk frameworks. We also knew that as a lender, credit risk automation was very important, and they wanted to be able to scale for growth. So we had to demonstrate knowledge for that. And finally, I'd recommend, and this is the case for any proposal, to include clear proof points, case studies demonstrating, for example, that they're going to get a measurable risk reduction and efficiency gains. We're going to provide them with regulatory expertise and a proven ability to enhance compliance, or we're going to deliver a practical, impactful roadmap that they can actually use. So the product we're providing isn't just a report. It would include a phased implementation plan with some quick wins and some strategic opportunities that would enable their long-term success.
Okay, great. Now that we talked about the proposal components, and we give a good example actually of how we can tailor this for a specific case, and obviously every client can be a specific case in terms of what's required in each section. Let's shift gears now into storytelling. And I personally enjoy storytelling because it gives me an opportunity to put forward the value proposition that ICG offer to the marketplace. So I'll turn back to David now and ask him, David, how we can effectively communicate in our proposal the value proposition in response to the customer problem that we identified, in order to ensure that they can see the great value that we can bring, or the unique value that we can bring, and convey it to their understanding while they're making a decision.
The great news is there are many ways. ICG has a unique design which delivers multiple sources of incremental value to clients over traditional pyramid branded firms. So the real question is, where is the client in its learning curve around its understanding of the ICG proposition, and what can we say to either reinforce key elements that are relevant to this particular proposal, or secondarily, how can we use this opportunity to increase their exposure to those advantages? So I think, Luke introduced a case study here, and I had the good fortune to work with Luke on this. And also, I say one of the value adds from ICG is the coaching that we provide. So to the extent that we have, people with more experience working with people with less experience, it's very common in the ICG culture for the people with more experience to help the people with less experience do a better job and improve the quality, caliber, and therefore the win rate of their proposals. And I think this advantage shouldn't be underestimated by the consultants listening to this webinar. I think that whilst we can share some best practices and some, what you might call key success factors for winning proposals, I think consulting is very much an apprenticeship career where people learn by doing under the appropriate, typically soft supervision of people who have more or different experiences who can add to the quality of the work being produced. Certainly that's been the case in my career, and one of the things I love about ICG is learning from all the people that I work with. So in terms of presenting ICG's value proposition, I tend to focus on a hybrid consulting model. We sit between the big branded firms and the body shops. We therefore provide a solution where we can provide, I use the term Lego brick consultants, so individual consultants who have deep expertise, specialization, and are typically not just done the job once or twice before, but maybe as many as 20 or 30 times. These people are true experts in that particular, functional and industry intersection. And the wonderful thing about our unique patented BAF process is we identify those people. And in this particular project, we ran a BAF and we identified Luke and others. And we gave the client the opportunity to select from the 3 best recommended candidates. And because of chemistry and cultural affinity, because I think all of them could have done a great job, they chose Luke to progress with. So a big part of it is hybrid, and as well as offering a independent individual contract consultant solution, we're also able to offer an expert panel model where we could supplement Luke with 5 gurus in other aspects of compliance risk for this listed lender, which any branded consultant would struggle to be able to provide. And these were in areas such as licensing, culture, data, technology risk, and other aspects of compliance where you couldn't possibly expect a single individual to be across all of those at the level of depth that our people were. So it was almost a combination of ICG plus GLG or Gerson Lehrman group experts as part of the team, along with partner QA and challenge. So we offered both a team-oriented approach or an individual approach or any combination thereof of experts. And the client understood by the end of the proposal presentation that they could choose any route forward. And they chose Luke, and they chose to let Luke get underway, and should and when the need arise, they will then bring in our expert panel members for a day or 2 of work to help them understand an issue, to help Luke progress some thinking, and if necessary, hire them for more. And that level of fluidity is the essence of agility and what we term industrialized adhocracy, which is at the heart of ICG success. So, I think that's where I start. I think getting into other things, such as I said before, global footprint, commendation by Forbes, the fact that our people have 10 years more experience than the average branded firm team member, the fact that we're probably 40% cheaper on a pound for pound like basis to any peer at any branded consulting firm. All those things, of course, appeal as well and are differentiators in the marketplace. So hopefully that answers your question.
Great, thanks, David. So Luke, now let's bring this back to your corporate lender case study. Tell us a bit more about how did you win that deal? I'm sure it was competitive in nature. So share with us, how did you do it?
It was competitive in nature, and an advantage to leverage what David said before was when providing the tangible, relatable success stories or case studies, I didn't just have to look at my own. We did need to understand what the client's pain points were. We did need to outline the approach and how we were going to address their pain points and the outcomes that we could improve. But in looking for case studies, I was able to look deeply into ICG's 1,000 BAFs that we're already doing and found several case studies where similar lenders were challenged in streamlining credit risk assessments aligned with APRA's evolving regulatory requirements. I could demonstrate how ICG's projects proposed a phased implementation plan, which focused on risk controls and reporting automation and oversight, and how ICG's projects led to a reduction in risk assessment time by 40% and improved governance, visibility, and strengthened compliance outcomes for the client. So I've got 24 years experience in governance, risk, and compliance. I've got less than 6 years experience in consulting. So working with David, working with the expert panel, I didn't just have to talk about my experience, but I could talk about the wider ICG network and leverage that.
Okay, so I assume you had here access not only to your stories, but also to the rest of the case studies that we have in our repertoire to be able to pick the ones that are relevant to the client.
That's right. And to your second point, Wade, about winning, I'm actually working with the lender right now, and they said to me yesterday that we won because we had the industry experience and we'd also proven and demonstrated in our proposal that we were able to deliver. So it wasn't just about me, but also about ICG as well.
Yeah, I should admit, having the case studies for me personally in the work I do is essential because it gives us a track record. And the track record is something that clients want to see. Do you have a track record or not? And that's usually the first few steps on the journey to building trust and gaining the trust to give us the work. So that's definitely relevant. Okay, now that we talked about the strategic storytelling, let's talk about the front page, or basically some of the proposal tips that we can do. And of course, with guidelines on how to use it, where to use it, with all the specifications for any marketing communication tools. So I would love for David actually to talk, because I know that he led this activity since day one when he started ICG 15 years ago. So I would love for David actually to comment a little bit about how to make those proposals more visually appealing to customer and impactful, and how we can bring some of the tools we are using to make this also an easier task for consultants. David, I think you are muted. Sorry.
Thank you, Wade. There's a construct we were taught when I was in consulting, which basically had 3 levels to it: structure, content, and style. And the idea here was that for any material document that you produced, you first had to think about the structure of the document you were preparing, you know, how many chapters, how many sections, titles, agendas, etc. And then what content went on into the pages or the sections, and then the style in which you presented it. And this is on the page because a lot of documents, particularly for proposals, are not presented, they're read. And so I'd always ask people who are developing proposals to remember that. Is this a presentation that I'm going to prepare as a proposal to present to a client real time, or is this one I'm going to prepare to deliver to them that will be read in their time? And they're very different experiences for the client, and they require quite different approaches to the document. And in fact, in most cases, you might get both. So you should prepare a short, very abridged, clear, easy to present version for the presentation in person or over Zoom like this, but then have a more detailed one, that's able to be convincing when it's being read, because people can read much faster than they listen. And so as I structure my materials, and when I was building ICG, I talked to a lot of boutiques, and I looked at individual contract consultants, and frankly I was appalled but excited by the variety of quality, the quality differences, the idiosyncratic style, and the overdose of personality that comes into those documents appalled me compared to the industry that I'd been trained in, which is management consulting. Because the problem with management consulting is very much a trust-based industry. People have to trust you at all points in the value chain. And so when you see these documents, which are an illustration of the way in which work might be produced, and you see some of the less than professional approaches, or approaches which are bordering on the extreme in one or two dimensions, whether it's color or cartoons or graphics or pictures or icons or text or color or, binding approach, etc., any of those dimensions, I think you're doing yourself a major disservice as an individual independent consultant. And when you're trying to compete with the bigger brands, you're not just competing with the bigger brands to win a particular assignment. There's no doubt that small consultants win small assignments, but very, very few smaller consultants win big assignments. Almost never, almost impossible. What wins big assignments and bigger assignments is building trust and confidence with a client through quite a conservative approach to material development and documentation and storytelling. So whilst it might sound a little boring, I strongly recommend that independent consultants adopt an ICG-like model to their branding and their approach to documentation, because the audience and the buyers are typically 40 to 65, certainly with the sort of level of consulting I sell, which is mostly C-suite, CO. And they're used to seeing materials from the bigger branded firms who have a trust mark, and that trust mark is well above the majority of independent consultants. It doesn't matter how well an individual executive or how highly regarded you as a single individual are. If you want to win bigger, broader programs over and above selling yourself in an unleveraged way, you need to wrap yourself in a globally reputable, high quality, relatively conservative, but highly professional brand mix. And ICG, I think, has been designed to support you doing that. So hopefully that gives you a sense of the whys and wherefores, in terms of how ICG has gone about its business. And I look at the backdrop, to your screen, Wade, and the way in which, you've selected a graphic, and we've, highlighted our brand and something that's important around our brand, and it's done in a very professional, consistent way. And then I, log on to some consulting and non-consulting calls, sometimes with clients. And I see this, potpourri of backgrounds and images, and it's just not professional. It just doesn't come across in a way which lifts your price point. And so one of the things that's astonished me is ICG has helped David Maloney, because I could have set up my own boutique and been quite successful as an ex-senior partner. But instead, I created ICG because I wanted to price my services well above the sort of number per day that I see most independents, even very senior independents, selling themselves for. And I've been able to consistently sell myself above the highest rate that I see any independent selling themselves at. And the only reason I can do that is because I'm not selling David Maloney at hotmail.com. I'm selling David Maloney at internalconsulting.com, one of the world's biggest and best consulting firms that's operated in 25 countries, been around for 13 years, completed hundreds and hundreds of projects around the globe. That's why I can do that. And anyone can, but they need to be part of ICG to do that. So thanks, Wade.
David, this is a great point, and I want to take it from there actually to the point of how we can sustain that client engagement that we started in the first point. And I just want to pick the lead that you mentioned about the presentation layer, and I would also love to hear Luke's reflection afterwards. One of the issues that we see, I personally, when I engage with a client and I put the proposal forward, and after I finish with the main presentation, that I actually make sure I do it in person, in the front of the client to answer all possible questions. I try to understand where it's going to, or who else will be having a view of this proposal. And then I do my best to engage them even for 15 minutes Zoom. And in the 15-minute Zoom, you will see exactly what you're seeing in front of you here. The same background, the same branding, the same consistency, because it's part of the value proposition we are presenting. So why I'm raising this, I will invite all our colleagues online who actually carry an ICG branding. You do have access to the ICG Gmail business system. You do have access to the Google Meet. And you can run all these meetings online with the same background you have in front of you here to provide you this consistency in terms of branding. And of course, you have also, if you are using Gmail, not a client email, but the Gmail online, you will get a consistent signature from ICG as well that we have already built for you. So all of this adds to the story. It's all parts of the consistency of our branding around ICG. That's maybe my add-on about how we can sustain the engagement. Luke, could you like to add anything to this, to that part of the webinar?
I would like to add something actually, and that is, in addition to having the brand in the Zoom, we also have the brand face-to-face. And I might have a fabulous relationship with a potential client, and if I go and have a meeting with them, I'm going solo as Luke Weisbrot. But if I bring David Maloney with me, if I bring Wade with me, suddenly they don't see me as an individual. They see me as part of a bigger brand, which is very, very powerful. It also means that if the client has criteria for selecting a capability, right, and I only fulfill 7 out of 10, I might be able to find somebody else within the ICG network that fulfills the other 3, and suddenly I'm having a conversation. So the size of the target market is actually increases. And finally, with the brand, I don't just have to sell operational risk services or compliance services. I can broaden the sales proposition to include everything that ICG is involved with, and help other people win business, and they can potentially help me as well.
Okay, all right, great. Now it's an opportunity for all our audience today to bring their stories around proposals and also questions. And I've actually received the first question here that I would love to share with David and Luke and see if we can get an answer for it. If you are, as ICG, discovered that you are competing against BCG or McKinsey, will you go ahead and put a proposal forward? That's an interesting question, and I will keep my answer until I hear from David and Luke.
The answer is absolutely. And it's because if we know the brand that we're dealing with, we have a huge number of advantages in the way that we respond. And so for those particular brands, I would do a couple of things. Firstly, I would populate the team with some people or alumni from those firms. So I'd make sure our team had some McKinsey or BCG people, and quite, more experience the better. So I can say, well, look, we're giving you McKinsey or BCG type capability. The second thing I would do is I would highlight the way in which ICG's team works more seamlessly with clients. We don't tend, the feedback we get from clients is that our people don't have that sort of air of, arrogant superiority that can often come from the big investment banks and, top tier consulting firms, that our people will roll their sleeves up. For example, I used to work in a bank branch as a banker, as a bank teller. That's very rare in the industry, and so having people who've worked both in industry and in consulting connotes huge advantages in terms of being reasonable and feasible around implementation. And this leads me to the last big advantage I tend to progress when I'm competing with those brands. I will say we can do the strategy and the operational blueprint or blueprinting of the strategy, plus the operating model, target operating model, but also the implementation. And ICG can provide a full end-to-end service at a price point and with people who have experience at each point in that project pathway. And we all know that when Bain or BCG or McKinsey are working at a client, the work has to come to an end. Otherwise, clients are absolutely wasting their money in a disgusting fashion. There's no way that Bain or BCG should be doing capability building implementation work. There's just that their price point just doesn't justify it. So when you express those advantages of ICG over those brands, of course, we're a very credible alternative. So absolutely, I'd respond. Thanks, Wade.
Okay, great. Luke, do you want to add anything to this point?
The only thing I'd like to add is that the client can influence who works with them as part of the team. So even with big brands like McKinsey, Bain, Booz Allen, etc., they might look at the bench and say who's available on the bench and then put the team together based on who's on the bench. With ICG, as David explained before, the client is offered potentially a number of people to interview, to consider, and they can influence who works with them. So with ICG, they're getting the capability, they're getting the rapport, and they're getting the price point that enables us to compete against other major branded firms.
Yeah, I should admit, I've been in that situation a couple of times in Asia when I was told up front that I have, one of them was BCG actually, the other one was KPMG. And in both situations, I happened to know the local consultants who will be visiting the client. So I was a bit naughty actually. During the presentation, the client asked me why we should go with you and not with your competitor. I said, I know who are the competitor, and all I will ask you to do is to read my profile against the profile of the consultant who will be doing your work. And then you'll be able to tell who will have the right experience for you. It's your decision after that. And we actually ended with 3 years engagement. That one was in Indonesia. And we ended with 3 years engagement with that client that started with 6 months contract. So we definitely have this experience. Another good question here came online a second ago. One element of proposals that hasn't been explicitly mentioned yet is benefits. How important is getting these right, the benefits, not features, of the work that will be delivered? I thought we mentioned a little bit, but David, you may want to expand on this.
Yeah, I think the question is talking to outcomes in the sense of what's actually delivered for the client that's a tangible benefit. And I think the differentiator for ICG, and one of the reasons we're called Internal Consulting Group, is we, as part of our DNA, build capability at the client. One of the things that branded firms do, and I can say this hand on heart because I was a partner of 2 of them, is we would provide light supervision to juniors who were learning on the job. They were really smart, they worked really hard, but most of the time they were learning. And at ICG, we do the reverse. We share expertise and capability to teach the client. So I think, as well as all the other outcomes of the type that Luke mentioned, i.e., we improve their costs, we increase their revenues, we improve their employee experience or customer experience, or help in a myriad other ways with things like regulatory support and the like. We also build and embed capability in clients in a way which simply doesn't occur in the branded firms. And so I think along with the more traditional consulting outcome benefits, I think capability building would be chief in my mind. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I really like this part, David, the capability building. I always try to tell my clients, we don't want to come back to fix the same problem again. And this can only happen if we can build the capability inside. And that we definitely, I think we do a good job in that part. Luke, any addition to what David just said now?
Sure. The CEO of the lender that I'm working for at the moment actually did a presentation himself about change management, and he said that they want to know what needs to be done, why does it need to be done, and how do you measure success that it has been done. So similarly, when you do a risk assessment, you always need to put the key risk indicators or the key performance indicators. So understanding them up front and having that mindset can certainly help articulate what the benefits are when you're writing your proposal.
Yeah, okay. I should admit, in my proposals, I try in my second or third slide to have 4 columns. When in one stream, I will articulate what the problem is. In the second stream, I will scope it exactly. What is it and what it's not, to ensure that we don't have an open-ended engagement. In the third stream, what can we do for you? In the fourth stream, how will you benefit from this? And by doing this, and then I go into more details, of course, but that's usually at the beginning. And I like, definitely, we need to be very articulate on how you can bring or project the benefits of the work we are doing, not only the features. That's important. Okay, I'll keep my eye here on the Q&A, and please, if you have any questions or comments to add or experience to share, please add it on before we end today's webinar. And I hope that you have seen some inner stories from what we do inside ICG as we prepare proposals, what we look for, the storytelling, the component, the sections, how we can bring the value proposition, the use of some of the tools that we develop in ICG. All of the above are important building blocks in order to build a winning ICG proposal to clients. So any further comments or questions or experience sharing that you would like to share with us today, please, this is the time. Okay, well, it's 43 minutes and we usually run the 45 minutes, so we are saving 2 minutes today. I would like to take this opportunity, of course, to thank my guests today, David and Luke. Thank you so much for your contribution and experience sharing, and for all our audience. Thank you for sharing your time with us today. I hope that you found this useful, and until we meet again in another webinar when we address another topic that's close to your hearts and to your internal consulting group business, I wish you all the best. Have a good day. Thank you.